Yeah, I think we can probably start now. Celine, maybe you want to start it off?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Celine from Mechanical Paradox. I'm your moderator today. So basically, that means hopefully you won't be hearing from me unless something goes wrong. But you're here to hear from this amazing outreach panel. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting off with Cece.
All right. Hi, I'm Cece. I'm also from Mechanical Paradox. This is my third year doing robotics, and that's about it.
Hi, I am Felipe. I am on team 8393, the giant Diencephalic Brainstem robotics team, and this is my third, coming up on my fourth year of FTC, as well as my seventh year in the first program.
And hi, I'm Heather. I'm from Almond Robotics in Maryland, and this is going to be my third year in the FTC program. So we're going to start off by a quick introduction on outreach. Oh, okay, no, never mind. We're going to start off by saying this is going to be a panel. So please put your questions in Slido. It's posted in the Zoom chat room. Don't post your questions in the Zoom chat room, post them in Slido. Here's the event code, so please join that. And Cece, if you could talk about this slide.
All right, so this is just a basic introduction for outreach. The first definition in the mentor manual is outreach is a vital component of the First Tech Challenge, is helping to build the first community by introducing more young people to the experience and by celebrating science, technology, and engineering. Outreach events include activities to encourage students and mentors to join existing robotics teams or to start new teams, as well as to raise awareness of robotics and education in general. So that is kind of just the basic first definition, but when it comes to outreach, you can go in a lot of different directions, but so we're going to cover like the differences in each team, and outreach is also a vital component for several awards, including Inspire, Think, Connect, and Motivate. So.
Yeah, and so I think I'm going to talk a little bit about what Almond Robotics does as outreach. The first thing that our team does when we focus on outreach is to always make sure we're following our vision. And that vision is to inspire a lifelong passion for STEM. So all of our outreach events are always aimed towards this goal. We've separated our outreach events into 3 different categories. As you can see, one is connecting the local STEM community. And one thing we do is we give out educational robotics kits to our community, which is one of the special events from our team. And we do numerous tours and we attend lectures. We also coach FLL junior and FLL teams. And then lastly, we attend lots of scrimmages. We like to volunteer at other first events. And First Online is going to be our outreach events during this COVID-19 pandemic for us.
All right, so for Mechanical Paradox, we have a similar 3 sections of outreach. So we focus on outreach within the STEM community, which includes any tours that we do of STEM companies. For example, we went to Johns Hopkins and had a personalized tour of their engineering department, which was really cool. And so that's what the photo is of there. And we also have discussions with STEM professionals. So we do things like design reviews and cover like what we're doing with our robot and like how it impacts how things from the engineering fields may help us and also help us in the real world. And then we have outreach within the first community, which it includes any mentoring and volunteering that we may do. So we mentor several teams. Most of them are FTC teams. We've also mentored FRC teams, FLL teams, and VEX IQ teams before. And we volunteer at events run by FIRST to try and help keep them with volunteers, because that's how those events function. We also then have outreach within the general community, which is promoting FIRST in STEM. We do a lot of demonstrations, and at those demonstrations, we'll bring smaller robots that kids can drive around, and we'll talk to the kids about FIRST and talk to parents and other adults about how STEM helps us and how FIRST in specific helps everyone. So that is really helpful. And then we try and focus on events that excite us and have an impact and kind of help us to learn as well. So we want events to benefit everyone and help everyone to learn, and that includes us and anyone else who might be at the events. We also try and include a variety of events, so we're not just always going to the same tours or the same people. We're trying to get a broad spectrum of events that we have planned and maybe been invited to attend, and several different aspects.
Okay, hi. So as Brainstem, we take outreach as essentially anything that we do outside of the robot portion. And that includes the 5 sections that we break outreach into. And those are promoting FIRST in school and community, engineering and business connections, community outreach, hosting camps and workshops, and then new team mentorship programs. Our main goal is that we hope that our investments that we are making now and that our impact can continue long after our robot competes for the final time. This year, we specifically focused on 2 main portions of outreach, and that was connecting with the FIRST community and connecting with local businesses. For the FIRST community, this is obviously a big part of the outreach portion, because there is a part in the rubric for judges that states that looks for outreach within FIRST. And we complete this by volunteering as judges, referees, and hosting events and running workshops within the FLO Junior, FLL, and FTC programs. Not only that, but these types of outreaches are renewable and reliable throughout the season. You can always find new teams that are looking for help, or you can always just look to help anyone who is looking for assistance within the FIRST program. And then also there's connecting with local businesses. This is the second big part of our outreach. You can introduce companies to FIRST. You can find ways for their volunteers to get involved, maybe volunteering at those scrimmages or events that you help run. And not only that, you can learn more about engineering principles along the way. Most beneficially, you can also get sponsors. So for example, our team is sponsored by IGUS, that we met while we were introducing them to FIRST, and they actually showed interest in sponsoring us. So that's another added benefit of doing outreach to local businesses as well.
Awesome. So I'm just going to switch over to the Slido. If you have, we're going to just start taking your questions in. Okay, so we have this poll up on what would you like to focus on most today?
So if you go on Slido, you can just click on, it's got question and answer and live polls. So you can go there, and if you answer the poll, then we know where we should be focusing to help you guys. And that would be very helpful.
So it looks like a majority of people like outreach with the local STEM community.
And outreach with promoting FIRST.
Cool. So I think this probably gives us a good, it looks like we should focus on the local STEM community. We have another poll to sort of gauge the audience. let's try that one. Is your FTC experience? So mostly new teams or 2-year teams?
All right, do we want to go to the next poll and then?
Yep, and then one last poll. Okay. So mostly students.
All right.
Cool. Thank you everybody for participating in the Slido poll. I think we can go to the questions now.
Okay. So how we're going to answer these is we're going to, if it's a question that might have a variety of answers, is we're each going to answer each of the questions from our team's perspective, and then we will try and answer some of the more simple answers with just one person. So let's start with, how do your teams contact STEM professionals / companies? So a lot of times our team will try and we'll look around and we'll find different aspects of STEM that we're interested in. So like some of our members are more interested in software and programming, and some are more interested in biology, or some are math or some other aspect. And we'll look at companies that kind of center in things that we're interested in, and we'll reach out to them and be like, hey, we're interested in your company. Do you happen to offer tours? And we try and email the companies, because a lot of times it never hurts to ask. And a lot of times companies will be glad to hear that people are interested in what they're doing and will want to help you, because promoting STEM is something that a lot of companies like as well. So that's how we will do it. We'll try an email, or sometimes we might see a company at an event and we'll reach out to them and be like, hey, do you think that you might be willing to offer a tour? Or we'll look at tours that are offered that are STEM based, which is really cool. Also, if we get sponsors, we always try and tour our sponsor companies, because we want to learn more about the company that is sponsoring us and help to promote them as well. So that's one of the big ways that we communicate with our sponsors. And sometimes we'll gain sponsors from the tours as well. So it kind of works either way. But a lot of times, to first initialize that contact, emailing the company is a great way to start. Or if you go and talk to the company in person, just taking that first step forward, it can sometimes be intimidating, but it's really helpful.
Right. Yeah. A lot of companies are looking to help, growing STEM professionals and aiding them along the way. So, I mean, oftentimes if you just shoot out an email to a company or two, it's hard to have them straight out reject you. You know, oftentimes if they may not be able to do it in one day, they're very flexible a lot of times. And as CC said, it's always great because, you can tour, you can learn more about it, and you can introduce them to first and even possibly get a sponsorship. So they come hand in hand. Contacting STEM professionals and companies.
Yeah, and just to add on, I think contacting STEM professionals is, for my team, the best way was to always meet in person. For some reason, email hasn't really worked out for us. So a lot of times what we do is, luckily in our community, we have lots of STEM events like festivals, or like science fairs, and that's a really good opportunity to meet with people in person and get to know experts, and then sort of following up with people afterwards is a really great way to have a good connection with a STEM company. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend, if you want to get in contact with more STEM professionals, is always to just find events where you can meet people in person. That's always the best way to make sure you're getting a response. I think we'll move on to the next question. How many events do you do a season?
Do you want to answer that first, Heather?
Okay. Yeah, so our team sort of does like two kinds of events. We do like weekly, regular occurring outreach events, such as coaching our FLL team and our FLL junior teams. And then we also teach like Lego robotics courses. And so we have sort of every week we have 7 hours of outreach that we do regularly. And then throughout the season, we try to tour lots of companies. So I think this year we toured 6 companies. And then we also do like volunteering and at variety of robotics events. So I can't say what the exact number is, but we have we try to do outreach every week if possible. So in the end, it's probably quite a bit. Yeah.
So I'd say in the end for my team, we end up doing probably upwards of 50, 60, maybe even 70, outreach events. But I mean, oftentimes it's not about the number of events that you do. It's about quality over quantity oftentimes. You always want to be able to put on the best event possible, even if that means reaching just a handful of kids. You can impact those kids far greater than if you're going to give a presentation to maybe 100 or 200 kids. But in the end, I would say that like for judges, it just sounds better to hear, maybe, you did like 2 or 3 events and you were able to start, 2 or 3 teams from those events rather than talking to 200 kids or like 300 kids and not having much of an impact, maybe than just to, talk to them for a few minutes, engage and grab their interest for only like 10 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, so we also focus more on quality than quantity. So I would say we probably have about like 60 to 70 events. However, we focus more on the hours that are put into it and making sure the events run smoothly. Because if you do a ton of small events, but they don't really have an impact on the people that you're trying to reach, or like they aren't as successful, then it's harder. Whereas if you can put in the time and effort, if you show that you're putting in time and effort, then you're going to have a more successful event. And having one really successful, really event that reaches a lot of people will be more beneficial than having 5 events that don't really show the effort and you're putting into it. So that is kind of what I would stress. Again, you don't want to just do one giant event and call it quits, but you do want to make sure that every event that you're doing, you're actually working to have the impact that you're trying to have, and you're working to put in time towards those events. So rather than looking at getting out as many events as you can, try and make sure that you get as many high quality events as you can out, because that's going to be more important.
So the next question is, where do you give FTC demos? I can start out with this one. I think my team doesn't do that many, at least FTC demonstrations. We do them a lot in the beginning of the year, sort of like we do one during a kickoff event. And then we also participate in other STEM events. There is STEM Festival where we're able to give an FTC demonstration. I think demonstrations are always great at public events. Yeah, and then well, we make sure that it's a great eye catcher and things like that. I think for FTC demos, I really would recommend like STEM festivals or science fairs. That's where our team did do a couple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same for us. I would recommend going to, science festivals and STEM fairs, but you could also do it at like companies, as we were talking about earlier, presenting to companies, getting them interested in first. And how you do it, well, that's just going to depend on your audience, right? If you go to a company, it's obviously going to be more beneficial to maybe show them FTC content, or maybe if you're on an FRC team, you could show them some of your FRC subsystems or something like that. Right, because you can get professional feedback on something like that. But let's say you're teaching to a group of students or young children, you can bring something like an FLL kit, right? First Lego League, you can bring Legos, and that's often enough to, spark someone's interest in this type of program. Just maybe a 10-minute demonstration of a small Lego robot doing its thing.
Yeah, so for demos, we do decent amount of demos in the beginning of the season. We have started to, we found that to get a demo at certain places, you usually just have to ask and hope. And if you maybe call somewhere and you're like, hey, we see that you're having this STEM-based event. We're an FTC team. This is what our team is about. This is what our team's done in the past. Would you be interested? Would you be willing to let us do a demo at your event? So we do like demos at state fairs sometimes. We've done demos at other events. We did a tour of a company and they were hosting an event later in the month, and we said, hey, would you be willing to let us demo at the event? And it was so successful that they then asked us to come back to the event the next year. So a lot of times if you just can find that events that are hosting something, that are doing something maybe STEM related, just a great place to start might be like if your school does a STEM night, then you could reach out to the school and be like, hey, could my robotics team present there? And that might be helpful. Or, just if you look for local STEM events that are occurring, they usually are willing to let you do a demo as long as you're willing to ask.
The next question is, where could I find the STEM community and what's the upcoming events? Maybe Cece or Felipe would like to start out with this one.
So for the STEM community, sorry. So you can find the STEM community everywhere. Try and look at like companies that are doing things that are engineering based or science based or math based, and you can find STEM events that are occurring there. Upcoming events, if you just search up like STEM events in Silver Spring, Maryland, then you're gonna find places that will be promoting them, and that's usually how you can get started. Just kind of look up events and find them. Or if you go to I'm homeschooled, so I don't actually have experience with this, but if you go to your school, they might be willing to offer you events, like be like, hey, here are some STEM events occurring in your community. You might be able to talk to like your science teacher or your math teacher, and they might have events out there. So a lot of times you can find the STEM community almost anywhere. And yeah.
Right. Yeah, but I wouldn't say just wait for upcoming events. You could often set up your own events, and that's what's, very difficult sometimes. It's setting up the events, but as Cece said, you can always talk to your school. You can talk to local businesses. You can shoot out emails. It's just simple, 10-minute write up and then a send. But yeah, I wouldn't just wait. Sometimes, you could go to STEM fairs, but also if you can set up your own events and stuff like that, that's also very beneficial.
Yeah, I think I agree with setting up the events. Like First Online was an event that our team and CC's team set up together. And it's sort of definitely, especially during this time, there's a lot of teams out there that have their own initiatives. And if you want to find out what's going on, I would recommend keeping updated with like social media or like other types of companies and what they're doing. And then that's a good way to keep up with what's going on, especially in FTC.
So what are some ideas for outreach events that teams could host, and where should they host it? So you could host events that are like show a robot demo where you set up a half field or a full field and you just drive the robot around, and maybe if your team has posters or something that you show people, then you might be able to arrange an event. Or you could even communicate with other teams around you and be like, hey, do you want to set up a scrimmage and open it to the public and show people? Or you could bring a smaller robot. So like our team actively mentors a VexIQ team. So we would sometimes have them do a STEM activity where they would build a smaller robot that we could then use in demos. And we'd go and have people be able to drive that robot around while looking at us drive the bigger robots around, which kind of gives them an introduction to STEM and things like that. As for where you should host it, that can sometimes be difficult to find locations, but if you look for places where they might host events or talk even with like the first community around you, they might be able to find places. There might be events in like STEM companies. They might be willing to have you host a demonstration at their company. If you like do a tour of the company, you might be like, hey, could we bring the robot and do a demonstration or something along those lines?
Yeah, I think touring is definitely one of the outreach events that a lot of teams miss out on. That's part of like the Connect Award. It's not just like doing demonstrations. So I think maybe if like your parent is like part of a company, you can go and easily do like a quick tour of the company. And then another thing that I think is a good thing to set up, especially for newer teams, it might be like classes, like robotics classes. My team does a lot of those. And we host them at our local library. So we have a library and they have like meeting rooms, and you can host classes there. And we do a lot of those like weekly classes, and sometimes we'll charge like a fee for it, and so we can actually use that as a fundraising event too. So you can look out at your local libraries, and those are really good places to host events. Yeah, so definitely teaching classes, something I would recommend. Should we move on to the next question?
Sounds good.
And so the next question is, how should I get the word out if my team is setting up an event? We tried flyers, but it didn't work as well. I can try this one. So we found, at least for spreading this event, we contacted the coordinators for FIRST in our community. So the Maryland coordinator has sort of like an email list, and we were able to have him sort of send out an email blast. That is one way you can try doing something like that. And I think there's a lot of social media, so posting on Instagram and Twitter, and also like the FTC Discord and Reddit and things like that is a good way to get the word out if your team is setting up an event.
Right, yeah, if you can definitely team up with like a known organization in your area, such as a library or a local company, they often have, like a corporate like Instagram or something like that, and they can post and help you do that along with your own postings and flyers, like you said, and that should draw some attention.
Yeah, I definitely recommend social media, and I'll reemphasize the pairing up with an organization, especially when you're a smaller team that might not be as situated in the first community, getting involved with communicating with other teams that might be willing to partner with you, and doing that could be helpful, but it can be difficult if you haven't met as many other teams. So you could also do things like companies, and I highly recommend going to the organization, the organizers of FIRST in your company or in your state or where area, because they will be able to help. They have those emails lists and they want to help you, and they could even get you in contact with a company that might be willing to partner you, or if you're looking for a space, they could also help you with that. They are always there to help, so they are a great resource.
Okay, so the next question is, for your team outreach hours, do you count student-only volunteer hours, or do you also include mentor/coach hours in your team's total?
Sorry, go ahead.
So we just include student hours because it is the students who are supposed to be getting the outreach and reaching out there and spreading the word about their team. So yes, your coaches might be at the event, but it's about what you're doing, similar to how you're supposed to be building your own robot and they are supposed to be assisting you. The outreach is about your work, not necessarily theirs.
Yeah, same here. We do not count our coaches or mentors' hours in the team total. It's only about what we do, as CC said.
Yeah, my team is the same. We don't include mentor or coach hours. Okay, so next question is, what's the biggest sponsor you have?
So we have sponsors in different aspects. We have sponsors who donate monetary funds. We have sponsors who donate our space to us. We have sponsors that donate parts to us. So our biggest sponsor, it's not necessarily as easy to determine, but two of our biggest sponsors are the Maryland Center for Entrepreneurship. They've given us our space for the past 4 or 5 years, and they've been very accommodating. They've helped us to get our word out, and they've done some promotion for us, and they've given us that space for us to meet, which is incredibly helpful. And also goBILDA, who donates some parts to us, which is amazing. And goBILDA is a fabulous build system. So yeah, but goBILDA is one of our bigger sponsors. So yeah, I could talk about sponsors all day, but I don't want to start going on and on. So those are our two biggest sponsors. Also, check out goBILDA. They're cool.
Yeah, I think my team, also same thing. We can't really rank them because sponsors sort of help you out in different ways. But I think the biggest sponsor for us is the Rockville Science Center. They're the library that's granted us space to do our meetings and also teach classes. And they've been helping us out for almost 2 years. So local libraries are great.
And for us, we think that it's very useful to have sponsors who donate not only money, but just a lot of other things. For example, their time. They can donate their time at, certain events that you host, or to talk to you, or their space. Like Heather and Cece said, you have sponsors that can donate their space. That being said, for us, robot-wise, we used to be sponsored by a company called IGUS, which makes non-grease rails without bearings. And we also get a lot of sponsors from local companies in our area. They will donate time in the form of like volunteering at events that we host. For example, Carnegie Mellon and maybe Argo AI. You may have heard of those two companies. They're two of our biggest sponsors. A lot of their volunteers come in and work. And aside from that, let's say sometimes we like try and raise money for local STEM initiatives. Those companies also step in as well.
Okay, so the next team is, what was your team's favorite outreach event this season?
So we had a lot of great events. Tour-wise, I really enjoyed the tour of Johns Hopkins engineering facility. We got to see some of their PhD students were working on, and some of their undergrad projects as well, and like just all of their research labs, which was amazing and really cool. And as for demonstrations, I'd probably say Air and Scare. It was definitely one of our biggest events, but it was really cool. We went to Udvar Hazy, which is an air and space museum, and we did a demonstration, and we had I think over 35,000 people attend the event, which was incredible. But it was just a really cool event because we saw a lot of people dressed up in Halloween costumes, and got to talk to all of these kids and just get to see the excitement on their face as they got to drive the robot around, which was really cool for me.
Mm-hmm. For my team, I would have to say it is giving back to like FIRST programs. If you guys have done FIRST in the past, it's really rewarding to go back and watch other FIRST teams and how they're now continuing in like FLL, for example, First Lego League, if you once did that. So our team is actually the first regional partner for First Lego League in all of Western Pennsylvania, which means that we put on all of the events FLL related in the area. And so for me, it's really rewarding to watch kids not only get engaged in FIRST, but also watch them grow throughout the season, watch their robots progress, and eventually culminate in like the state championship and stuff like that. So that's what's really awesome about that.
Yeah, and I think for me, I probably can't choose between like coaching at FLLTU and then another event we call Hello Robot. We do this event every year where we assemble like 200 little kits that just has like a little motor and a battery, and we give those out to students at an event, and they sort of build the robots, and they get to keep it and bring it home. That's probably my favorite outreach event. Being able to see like kids building their own robot for the first time and seeing the excitement is always very rewarding after doing a lot of work. So I think we'll move on to the next question. Our team is looking into getting sponsors. How do we go about doing that, and which companies have you gone to?
So for getting sponsors, it's really important that you try and establish a relationship with a company and contact them, and just ask really is the biggest thing to do. But like we've gone and toured companies before we asked for sponsorships, and then spoken to them like, do you offer sponsorships for FIRST teams? Or we have like our lead coach works for BAE Systems, and we have gotten a sponsorship from them. We've also done demos there and just gotten to talk to people there. So that's one way we've gotten sponsors. But a lot of times we just try and we like to establish a face-to-face relationship and go and meet with our sponsors and maybe talk to them about getting the sponsorship in the first place. Or we have sent emails if the sponsors aren't necessarily local. And like some ways to just get smaller sponsors, we've been sponsored by Home Depot and Staples in the past. Just we go there and we've talked to the people there and we've been like, hi, this is our team, this is what we're about, we need some Lexan, do you think you could possibly donate it to our team? And they've given us the Lexan, or we've gotten parts, tools, even just like we've gotten posters printed from Staples. So just talking to just going in and talking to them and explaining what you're about. And especially if you have students doing that, that shows that you are passionate about what you're doing. And that is something that companies want to help promote and fuel that passion. So as long as you're showing that you're passionate and talking to them, or just like organizing it, it'll help to gain sponsors.
Also, keep your eye out for grants. I know that at state championships and even at the world's levels, a lot of companies get in and they offer grants for a lot of teams, whether that be there's, the company called goBILDA that sponsors CC's team, and they have the rookie team grant, I think. And, other companies like FedEx that now sponsor First, also have, they also offer grants to, rookie teams or first teams in general. So, maybe you could research something about that.
Yeah, I think, and just to sort of, I really agree with Cece's point that you always want to have like a person-to-person interaction, and if you have a connection instead of just through like emailing companies, it's a lot easier to actually get a response from companies, and if your like parents work at a company, that is also a good opportunity to get sponsorship as well.
Yeah, and just to add one more thing that I forgot, there are a lot of companies that even if you aren't necessarily at the state or world's level, but like Felipe said, those grants are available. So if you are researching companies and looking for sponsorships, try and check and see if they already have grants that you can apply for, or application sponsorship. And if you apply for as many of those as possible, you will be likely to succeed in some, maybe not all. And like, if you don't necessarily get a sponsor your first time, don't think that that's going to reflect all of your times getting sponsors. There are certainly going to be some companies that might not be able to sponsor your team at the time, but that doesn't mean that the next team you ask won't say yes.
Okay, so the next question is, I have 2 years of experience, but all we have done so far is session at libraries. Do you have any ideas for other simple ideas for outreach and presentations? I think I would say one idea is definitely tour companies. I know like Amazon does like free tours for anyone who just signs up. There are plenty of other companies that do that as well. And it's really good for like winning Connect Award.
Also, you could do things like try and find some local, if you're an FTC team, find a local FLL team that might be interested in getting some help from someone who is in a higher level of the competition, because you do have some experience, and so you would be able to pass on that knowledge and help that team. And so then you could go and maybe stop by their team and like mentor them, maybe like every other week you go, or you mentor like once a month, or you invite them to see what you're working on, and then you can get active in the first community as well, so that you are then communicating with other first teams and helping other first teams.
Right. Along the lines of what Cece said, yeah, if you can just contact your regional partner or the person who runs first within your area, you can often find a lot of volunteering positions. If you're under 18, that'll probably be like lower level positions, maybe like field reset, but don't get me wrong, those are great ways to get started in the first program. And, if you can get your mentors involved too, or older members, then they can also be like referees and judges and stuff like that at local events and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I just want to add on that like outreach events can be anything you think of. It doesn't have to be something like another team has done already. It can depend on like what you've seen your community struggling in. Maybe you have there's some charities and you can try raise, donating things to people, or not just sessions at libraries, but anything that your team can do, it can be outreach. It doesn't have to be FIRST related, and you don't have to do it with like a company or something like that. It can really be anything that you can think of for outreach. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. What kind of content do you address when promoting FIRST to parents and students?
So for our team, when we talk to parents and students who are interested in FIRST, we kind of have different things that we cover for parents versus students, but when they're both there, we try and cover everything. So we'll talk about what FIRST is, first of all, and like what their core values are and what the different levels of FIRST are. So if you're talking to someone who is your age, you might want to tell them about FTC or FRC, depending on like how old they are. But if you just talk about all the different programs, then that can usually give people an idea, that like if you are a school-aged student, then there is probably a spot for you in FIRST. And then also just talking about how to find local teams that might be accepting members if they're looking at joining a team, or if they haven't been able to find those teams and want to maybe start their own, talking to them about the first steps that might be required in that, and providing them with contact information in case they want they want to go through with that, but they don't have enough people, and they want to know if you maybe have had other people who are interested in starting a team and you can work to help them, or if they want someone to help mentor their team. And usually we tell them like what our experience has been and what we've enjoyed most about it. And just giving a basic idea of what FIRST is, what the programs are, and how to join or start your own team.
Yeah, I think when promoting FIRST it's always really important to talk about the impact FIRST has on students. I think we all know that FIRST is an amazing program, and it really is very impactful for students. It's a place where you can learn things that you don't learn at school, and it's a lot of real life that you see in FIRST. And so when we promote FIRST, at least for my team, we really like to emphasize that FIRST is sort of like a once in a lifetime opportunity, and the students who participate in FIRST are very successful, and they're sort of exposed to all of these opportunities. So when we teach when we coach like our FLL teams or FLO junior team, or we do sort of like presentations about FIRST, we always talk about how impactful it is. And that really grabs the attention of a lot of parents and students as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's great to mention the impact FIRST has. Like, parents love to hear that. I think the statistic is that like 70% of those graduating coming out of a FIRST program go into a STEM related field. That's great for them to hear, because obviously, the STEM field is growing faster than ever, probably the fastest growing industry in the world right now, especially in like more developed countries like, America. But that's great for them to hear. They love to hear that. And yeah, that's just something for the parents. But for students wise, you're gonna have to cater that to whoever your audience is. If it's younger kids, you're gonna have to bring something more simple. But older kids, you can, introduce them to something more advanced, like an FTC robot or a professional coding environment or something like that.
Yeah, and even if you're like talking to a younger kid and show them the bigger robots, be careful. Like, don't go into, we have odometry and this is how we found odometry and calculated it. Go into, the robot moves on its own. So yeah, just to reemphasize what Felipe said.
Okay, the next question is, any ideas for fundraising? We tried bake sales, but those weren't very successful. So my team does a lot of, like I said, like classes. We do like weekly classes, and we also teach like a classes with our local Chinese school. We're partnered with our Chinese school, and we teach classes there too. And we do like and like an entry fee for that. That's really one of our big fundraising tips is we basically teach classes and we accept the fee, and that can be something you might want to try out.
Yeah, keep an eye out for sponsorships and grants, as we said earlier. Apply for those. But also, I know for my team, we often at the events we run, we have a concession stand. That's a great way to make money. You can also hold camps over the summer, either teaching STEM and supporting the team directly, or if you can find like a summer job or something like that to make money and then indirectly support the team like that. That's also a great way to do it.
Yeah, so we've done, we try and focus on getting sponsors and such, but also we've done some fundraising events and we've accepted donations at all of our events. And one of the first events we did with our team this year, we did a car wash where we were working to try and attract people by washing their cars. And then when they got out of the car and it was being washed, one of us would stand there and tell them about FIRST. And we actually had some kids who then reached out to us about joining an FLL team or a junior FLL team to try and get active in it. But we kind of gave out our handouts and stuff at the event, and we also accepted donations and provided free food, but then asked for donations, and that actually gave us a little, like, I think it was a couple hundred maybe. So that's just a way we were kind of trying to stay active and promote FIRST and also accept donations. So usually if you accept donations, so you'll find some people who want to donate, but the biggest way to get funding is definitely through sponsors because they're going to give you larger scale funding. Mm-hmm. So look at sponsors for your.
Yeah, and then another thing I forgot is there's these things called like Sugo workshops. There's going to be another team talking about this. It's like making Lego robots, which is a great fundraising opportunity. If you want to listen into it, it's later this week. Okay, the next question is, how many outreach hours does your team have a season?
So going off last year's season, because, obviously this was not a completed season. This year, I think we had upwards of 1,000 some man hours, not total hours. So it's something around that, I would say.
Yeah, I think my team had about 700 hours this season. We keep track of that with just like a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're a smaller team. So we try and aim for respective per person hours. And so we try and aim for breaking 100 hours per person. Usually we got, I think this season, before the season was ended, cut short, we had about 380 something hours, and we're a 4-person team. So that was about 90 hours per person, math, 95-ish, I don't know. So yeah, that, but if you try and aim for 100 hours per person, then that usually is a good starting place, and then go on and get as many, rather than focusing on the total hours you can get, because your team sizes are going to vary. If you're a larger team, you're obviously going to get more hours than a smaller team, just because you have more people that are attending the events. But if you focus on average hours per person, then that'll help. And I would say aim for about breaking 100 usually.
Yeah, I think outreach hours is sort of is something, it depends on the team. I think what our team likes to focus more on is people impacted, or impact on our students instead. I think that sort of shows like how dedicated you are to your outreach, more so than like I did this many hours.
Right, yeah. A lot of times, the judges in general are looking not just to hear how many hours or how many events you've done, but it's how you followed up on those events, right? So if you've gone back, if you've recommunicated with those students, if you've checked back to see how they're doing and provided more feedback. So it's just creating a continuous lasting relationship. That's oftentimes what matters most.
Yeah, it's about quality and impact more so than quantity. And as long as you can work on that, then you're going to be able to do well. So don't focus on getting, like, don't say our goal is to get 100 hours and that's it. Focus on how can we make our outreach events impactful and do and achieve the goals that we want to achieve. And if you do that, then the hours and the number of events will usually help with that, but I would focus more on the high quality, because if you have an event that does have a large impact and helps a lot of people, and then you follow up on that event and communicate with teams or whatever to continue, then that's going to be more impactful than saying you did 2 5-hour events, maybe.
Definitely the significance of your event is more important than how many hours you got. So when you're doing like your judging presentation, you always want to focus on the significance and the impact.
Mm-hmm.
We can probably skip this one. Do you keep track of how many people you impact with your outreach events, and how many people did you impact this season?
So we try and keep track of people who were reached at each event, and we usually we have, I don't know the total of ours this season, but you know, we try and focus on like people attending the events and such. So like it, rather than writing down like we talked to these people at this event, we'll look at like this was the number of people that attended the event and we spoke to most of them, and whatnot. So don't, like, if you're at an event, don't be like counting 1, 2, 3. I talked to 5 people. Look at general average, but try and focus at the events on actually doing what you're trying to do at the events, but do keep a relative track of the number. So I don't, for number of people impacted this season, I don't know that I have the number, and ballpark estimate, I don't want to make one of those because then I don't want to be too far off. But yeah, just impact as many people as you can. But again, it's more about the quality of the relationship. So if you're mentoring a team and you spoke to, like, if you helped a team once and like went to their event once, but you did that with like 20 different teams, then it's less impactful than if you were working solidly with like 8 or 9 teams and being like, and establishing those connections. So try and find a balance between focusing entirely on the number of people and the number of hours, so that you are just making you're making an impact in people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. You do want to take a rough guesstimate of how many people you're affecting,
Yeah.
but it's not, yeah, it's just about the quality of the outreach that matters the most. It's how you can affect those people. And for how many people did my team impact this season? Our team, the number is a bit skewed. It's upwards of it's in the thousands, because we are actually the first partner for all the first programs in our area, which means we run FLL, FLO Junior, and some FTC events, meaning that we, get to, broadly impact some 120 teams for FLL and 40 teams for FLO Junior. So it's a little bit more skewed for us. But I would say that if you can just solidly impact maybe 50 kids or 50 people each year, that's a very, it's a success. I would say that's a great number to hit.
Yeah, I think CC Felipe pretty summed it up pretty well. It's really about the impact and significance. It is past 7:30, so I think we'll answer 2 more questions, then wrap it up. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll do next question, which is it better to do outreach target to FTC age kids, or is it okay to do outreach events that may only have fell on junior FLL age kids?
I don't know. It doesn't really matter too much, I would say. For FTC, it's great to have those connections within the program. Maybe you can meet up with the team and discuss at your local, competitions. But I specifically just like doing it with FLL and FLO Junior, because it's fun to watch them light up for the first time in realization of some robotics thing, or, it's really rewarding to watch someone come up to you and ask about how they can get involved in FIRST. The one thing I would watch out for is, I think if you're over 14 and you're running an official FIRST program or something like that, you do have to get clearance from your state to work with FLL and FLO Junior teams.
Yeah, I think for this question, I would say don't focus on who you're targeting. Like I said, like outreach can be anything. You don't have to target people who are in in FIRST already. You can do like anybody. I know there's like some team out there that help plant trees in their park, or like donated clothes to charities. Yeah, unless you're like trying to promote FIRST, outreach can be anything. You don't have to focus on just robotics.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna piggyback on what they both said. It's really either are good options, like if it more matters what you're doing than where or like how or which age groups you're focusing on. So, if you find that your team is working a lot with junior FLL, then that's fine. Don't stop focusing on junior FLL to focus on FTC or whatever. Just whoever you find yourself working with, and just try and make an impact with the people, but age and what level of the competition they're in is not going to be a major impact or on which events you should choose to do.
Yeah, I think it's just totally dependent on what your team is more comfortable with. Okay, I think this would be the last question. What kind of outreach events did you host that led to your teams having so many outreach hours?
So a great way to get hours is volunteering at FIRST programs. It's really not hard. You just have to talk to the regional partner, and they're always actively looking to recruit volunteers for their programs, whether that be FLL, FLO Junior, FTC, and even FRC. You could be a field reset or a referee at a game table for FLL, or even just a queuer. It doesn't matter. All outreach is some outreach, and it will impact people positively.
Yeah, and if you when it comes down to it, a lot of the times if you spread the outreach out, so don't try and get all of your outreach in the course of a week or a month. If you spread it out throughout the season, you'll find that it doesn't actually seem like as much as it sounds when you say it. But if you just try and what our team's done is we try and do 1 or 2 tours a month. And the tours are maybe 4 to 6 hours. And so that does rack up when you add it all up. But, if you do the events, just try and volunteering is a great way to get a lot of hours quickly, because the events are going to be several hours. But yeah, for events that lead you to having so many hours, it's just kind of a variety of events. And, so I think our longest event was an 8 or 9 hour event, but we just tried to get a lot of smaller events. So if you have, but like the events impacted a lot of people. So rather than focusing on trying to rack up those hours, try and focus on your impact. So like if you have one event that is maybe 6 hours, or even just a 1 hour event that teaches that, or like reaches out to 30 people, then that's helpful as long as you make sure that you have that impact. So yeah.
Yeah. And then for my team, we do like outreach every single week. So we try to aim for like 6 hours every week. So it just racks up in the end. Yeah, but again, it's always about the significance and the impact and not how many hours you got. And if the other panelists have anything else you want to add on, we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
We're good.
Oh,
do you have something, Cece?
If you have any questions that didn't get answered, then feel free to reach out to any of our teams or all of our teams.
Yes.
We are all available to help and want to help. And so, it's great. Even if you just like maybe put your question in, if you could write a review reviews are available on the First Online website. So if you go there and write a class review, then you might be able to put your question in there and we can follow up.
Right. There's also some great resources like the FTC Reddit and the FTC Discord servers are great places to ask people for help and get more information on, what you can try to do. I think all of us are on those servers, all of us are on those subreddits, so you can reach out to us personally if you're looking to do that as well.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then if you have any more questions, please join our FTC First Online Discord. All of us are on there and we can answer your questions. And then last thing, we just posted a feedback form. Please take some time and give us some feedback. We're always trying to bring better content all the time. And please sign up for our other workshops. We have more to come.
Yeah, we've got several more workshops coming up. Like Heather said, we have the Sugo one.
We have a advanced programming one coming up, which will be interesting.
Yeah, so there are a lot of great events. And if you go to the First Online website, you can see the full schedule of those. And also, if your team is interested in teaching a class, then you can sign up, and we like to review the presentations beforehand. And then so that helps you to get in communication with our teams, and we get to know you a bit and make sure that everything in your presentation is ready. And then you can present a class. And that is actually a great way to start getting outreach. So yeah, just visit the First Online website, which the link is in the chat. And if you're interested in any of those opportunities.
Yep. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yep.